transmissions detected.
Kill them all.
No additional shot nor powder. A compass that doesn't point north. And I half expected it to be made of wood. You are without doubt the worst pirate I've ever heard of.
But you have heard of me.
Sometimes you're better off dead. There's a gun in your hand that's pointing at your head. You think you're mad, too unstable, kicking in chairs and knocking down tables.
Hello, my friends. It's almost impossible to decipher anything when the ones who wish to rule our world also record history. They get to decide what's fact or fiction. Most people blindly accept this, and they never second guess why there seems to be two different realities being documented in our past. This is one of those stories from that reality that we don't know about. Of course, let me be clear, it was deemed false and nonsensical. Written, I take it, to tell children before bedtime. And if what I'm about to read is truly some fairy tale, imagine telling it to a kid before they go to sleep. It's just silly. Either way, I copied this short story in an old book in the Library of Congress several years ago. It was one of 4 different explorers' accounts from around the world. Out of all of them, this was the best one to me. If you know what book it's from, put it in the comments for everybody else. And with that said, here we go. On behalf of His Majesty King George, Sir William McNeilly's Journey to the North. In the spring of 1757, in the delightful Bahama Islands is where I was dispatched to join forces with Captain Barnabas and his crew of the Maltese galleon Frost Princess. His ship was 180 feet long, 60 feet in beam, and displaced approximately 1,800 tons. It was loaded with 6 months' provisions and what seemed to be a year's supply of rum. I learned fast that Barnabas and his crew were quite the consumer of spirits. However, despite their rough nature and burly appearances, they were surprisingly kind and quite the gentlemen, especially with the ladies of the night. After the introductions and settling payment with the captain, a drink was said to be in order, and when many bottles were emptied, I was finally shown my quarters aboard the Princess. One must take note, never have I seen a finer galleon in all the seas. The craftsmanship throughout its entirety is of the highest quality. Even her cannons were exquisitely made. The next day I began to feel the overwhelming sickness caused by the motion of the sea, and I drank a horrendous concoction given to me by the first mate, Mr. Wesley. It had quite the kick, and to my surprise it worked rather well at calming my nerves. I no longer felt the overwhelming urge to heave the contents of my stomach. After a few more doses of the awful tasting liquid, its potency overtook me. Many bottles were available, and some men chose this over the rum. I was told that it was made from a flower that grows in the desert and from a small berry that grows in the jungle. By themselves they were quite poisonous, but when mixed together they created a bright purple medicine. I grew very fond of its pleasurable effects and have secured many bottles to return with. The next morning I rose quite refreshed and began hounding the crew about the fantastic things they had told me of the night before. In the end, their words could never have explained the magnitude of excitement in store for us all. And we sailed north for 3 weeks, and just before dusk on the 24th of May, Mr. Wesley announced land ahead. As we entered the mouth of a calm bay, we could see 4 large fires burning on shore. Still drifting quite fast, without notice, Captain Barnabas ordered the anchor be dropped immediately. The entire ship was jolted violently to port, and many men were swept off their feet. I, finding myself nearly thrown overboard, asked the captain if he'd gone mad. He said nothing, only grinned as he motioned to the beach ahead. I struggled to catch a glimpse of what it was in the low light that I was seeing. I began to trace the outlines of very tall people standing over makeshift roasting racks, cutting and slicing meat from what seemed to be large animals. The intense smoke from the fires released a sweet, odd smell that I was very unfamiliar with. As my eyes focused, it was a truly odd scene to behold. There were at least 20 giants busy at work, male and female, all 5 meters or about 15 feet tall. They appeared to be completely naked and were oblivious to our presence, ignoring us, concerned only with preparing their meals. Some played music and others sang grotesquely. almost chanting in a language foreign to any known by the crew. I interpreted of Middle Eastern dialect, perhaps Aramaic or Hebrew, and their voices were very loud and raspy. And as the ship settled, the captain used his powerful spyglass and began intensely studying the scene ashore. After a few moments, he motioned for the crew with hand signals to ready the guns. He then turned to the first mate and whispered softly, "Kill them, Mr. Wesley. Kill them all." The more my eyes adjusted to the dimming light, I was able to make out what it was for dinner, and what was causing the unusual aroma we smelled in the air. Dear God, have mercy, humans. These wretches were cooking humans over the fires. For assured destruction at close range, Mr. Wesley requested the crew load the cannons with grape shot. Barnabas nodded in agreement, but never so much as blinked, as he continued staring through the eyepiece. I believe the captain was perhaps in shock, as was every man who had not yet seen such things up close. I myself was fastened firmly to the deck, due to this newfound fear being manifest inside me. These beings were different from normal giant humans. Even from our vantage point, their heads appeared disproportionate with their oversized torsos. After observing them for only a few minutes, the crude music and awful singing abruptly ended. All fell silent, and that's when they began to eat. Words cannot express the unwell condition that had overtaken my body. Stricken with horror and disgust, I covered my ears tightly, so that I may not hear once more the dreadful sounds these barbarians made when snapping and crushing bone. The signal was then given, and I nearly jumped from my boots when the guns were fired. May God forgive my dreadful thoughts. To me, it was a truly satisfying sight, as the princess unleashed her fury upon these wretched souls. She bore 33 guns on her port side, 12 50-pounders on the gun deck, 12 20-pounders on the upper deck, 5 10-pounders on the quarterdeck, and 4 6-pounders on the forecastle. Broadside and sitting still in the water, every gun met their mark. After the initial volley, the order was given for the crew to fire at will. And taken off guard, caught in the open with no cover from the blistering shot, they were all cut to pieces with the first reports, the rest being merely the crew's gruesome revenge. The sight that was unfolding before me was of utter madness and a satisfaction that has no proper explanation. When the guns finally stopped, their echoes were rumbling in the distance, and not one word was said to another. With a nod being all I could muster, I let the crew know I was thankful for their marksmanship and lethal efficiency with the guns. None dared to approach the scene during the night, and to everyone's dismay, and indeed my own, I volunteered to go ashore with the men at dawn. Armed with 4 pistols and Mr. Wesley's powerful blunderbuss, I still shook uncontrollably as I stepped from the small boat onto solid ground. There before us, lying on the beach, I saw terrible things, piles and piles of terrible things I respectfully wish not to relay. I questioned why the flood of Noah had not dispatched such abominations from the earth, because there was no doubt they were the feared cannibal giants I had heard made mention of many times, possibly those from the Holy Testament. The only locations of these ancient peoples being found was in the far southern regions. How did they get here? Their ship was very inadequate and dilapidated for such a trip. It appeared to have run aground on the shallow reef, and they must have stumbled upon this village and overtook them. And when the coast was clear, the captain and 20 fully armed men came ashore, and we entered the small city to search for anyone or anything else. There we found beautiful and elaborate homes made of finely cut stone blocks so large that the thought of moving such enormous weight was ludicrous. Even the wooden structures were massive and extremely well built. When the captain finally spoke, he only mumbled to himself, "They built it. It was theirs." After a moment to ponder what he had said, I come to realize that this uncharted island was home to the giants, not the others. Unfortunately, cheating death in vain, those of the shipwreck became dinner for the cursed. As we searched the beautifully constructed houses and dwellings, we filled our sacks to the point of rupture, and our pockets with as many coins and jewels as possible. Fearing there could be others close by, we made our way down the road and back to the gate made of iron that sealed the way into the city. Barnabas suddenly froze mid-step, and in unison all of us followed his lead and fell silent and still. From our vantage point, ahead and at a lower elevation, the entire beach could be observed. One may assume we all possibly were losing our sanity. However, I assure you this not be the case. My thoughts were that my mind was indeed deceiving my senses, but it wouldn't take long to wake from my stupor. There in plain sight, the most terrifying creatures to ever walk this earth. They were indeed enormous, real-life dragons, very vicious in appearance with colorful skin. They were snarling and growling, nipping at one another, fighting over the feast of flesh that lay strewn over the beach. And after gathering our nerves, when the captain gave the word, there was no hesitation. Not one man fell behind. With haste but stealthily, we made our way down to the boats. The fear that burned inside me of being eaten by such a monster was overwhelming. However, to our disbelief, they, like the giants, not so much as noticed our presence, consumed with the morsels they had stumbled upon. Feeling inadequate to deal with such creatures, we were thankful for slipping into the boats undetected, and without a moment's delay we were off. All hands rowed with meaning back to the safety of the Princess. And once on board, we sailed immediately from that dreadful place, and gradually the men settled down for the night with the help of several bottles of rum. While the captain and I pondered the scene we had witnessed, I too swallowed several sips from my flask of the purple syrup to calm my stricken nerves. We found the giants were naked. They had stripped off the most elegantly made clothing they wore in preparation for their meal, clothing fit for kings and royalty, only 3 times a man's size. I have secured the best examples of these and will return with them. Barnabas and I have charted the island and recorded the wrecked ship, its cargo, and the crew's horrible demise. I dare not forget the warning we placed of the dragons being present. Sadly, it will surely be ignored by the unlucky. We sailed in good waters for over a month, and about 100 miles off the coast of Greenland, we once again found a group of islands not on any of our charts. The large map we had taken from the cannibals showed them in detail, and this would become our guide as it was the most accurate and divinely map we had ever seen. There were 7 islands, and each was complete with a town or a small city, a courthouse, a square, and many buildings and homes. We had no expectation of hospitality from whoever lived in this place, our thoughts being it was merely the homes of more unruly giants. As some of the crew gathered fruit while searching the shore for signs of life, 30 armed men joined the captain and I for a closer look at the structures we noticed inland. Within minutes of entering the gates of this small city situated in the middle of this beautiful, lush island, we realized all of its inhabitants had long gone. Just as the island of giants, the homes built here were the same, enormous and sturdy, Romanesque, but not the works of any normal-sized men. As we once again pillaged these homes and filled our pockets with gold, jewels, and trinkets, a loud voice suddenly echoed through the courtyard. "Pardon me, good sirs, may I have a word?" All the men came to arms as the tall figure approached. To our surprise, it was a Tartar, handsome, divinely dressed, and well-spoken. He stood over 10 feet in height and appeared to weigh well beyond 600 pounds. I stared so intently at this oversized man, every detail of his face was intriguing. I gazed at him perhaps to the point of embarrassment with my overbearing interest. As he took notice of my childlike demeanor, he smiled rather pleasantly. Perhaps in order to set me at ease or to break my intense reaction to his presence, he reached into his pocket and retrieved a solid gold coin and tossed it to me. It was masterfully made. On one side was the face of a king but had no name or date, and the other side bore a phoenix at full flame. It was unknown to any of the crew, and to this day its origins are still a mystery. After the introductions, we sat and listened to his swashbuckling tales of his journeys to the inner and outer realms of our world. Although the crew and I interrupted repeatedly, and some of the men laughed at him and poked fun at his ridiculous stories, the captain never said a word, but with an almost fatherly tone, he once ordered us quiet and told the Tartar to continue. His name was Captain Joseph Tristan. He and his crew of 50 had made a southern journey the year before, and when they arrived back home, everyone on the island had vanished without a trace. We told him of the cannibals that we had encountered. He was very happy knowing we had sent them to their maker in such a flamboyant way. As he and the captain shared charts, they spoke in his native tongue that none of us could understand. The next morning, as we prepared to return to the Princess, a strange ship rounded the cove and slipped alongside her. It was the largest vessel I or any of the crew had ever beheld, twice that of ours. Its name was the Dark Star, and its sails were made of the sleekest black cloth. The enormous ship had at least 200 guns of various sizes and weight, a truly magnificent sight to behold. Captain Tristan and his crew requested to accompany us on our journey north. Barnabas hastily obliged, given the extra security force their mere presence offered us. And both ships sailed for another 28 days until we reached the inner boundary. Captain Tristan bellowed out, There the northern marker was ahead. In disbelief, I questioned the origins of this masterpiece. Standing firm was a gigantic marble statue of a man, standing over the waves 100 feet tall with his sword drawn pointing north. To grasp the enormity of it, it should be noted that the depth there was measured at 23 fathoms, or about 80 feet. I learned from some of the crew members that we were en route to acquire loot for our troubles. The Tartar insisted we be paid handsomely for dispatching the giants. Once tethered to the Dark Star, Captain Tristan gave the signal to hold the current position, and 4 of his crew stripped to their bare and dove straight into the deep black still water. I gave Barnabas a look of confusion. Smiling, he quietly explained, The crazy Tartars know where the wrecks are below. They will dive down to the very bottom, into the darkness, into the depths, in order to retrieve the treasures they hold. After what seemed like an eternity, the first man broke the surface. He was carrying a chest that must have weighed a ton. We hoisted it aboard, each man delivering to the surface twice his weight in gold. Captain Tristan was seen simply shining his boots on the main deck. The treasure, it was of no concern to him. Once loaded, Captain Barnabas ordered the Princess to be better secured to the Dark Star. It would be towing us through the narrow strait. It was a foolish move for most, but not with our present company at hand. The strait was known for ripping holes into and swallowing ships without cause, and the natives would send boulders and rocks to sink you to the bottom. As we were being pulled along by the enormous ship of our Tartar friends, I couldn't help but feel again inadequate for what we were about to partake. However, we made the course rather quickly. The Dark Star seemed to be propelled by more than just wind behind her sails, and we were almost through the strait when the Star bellowed a volley with its enormous guns. Captain Barnabas barely batted an eye as we watched her shots pepper the rocks above us. Although we did not see what she was shooting at, whatever it was, we were sure that it was dead. Once in open water, we freed ourselves from the Star's grip and entered a small hidden bay where a smoldering volcano sat panting and grumbling. There we would leave the Princess at anchor and join the crew aboard the mighty Dark Star, its hull able to withstand the task of navigating the maelstrom. Captain Tristan ordered all things of magnetic force on board the Star to be taken ashore, all guns, all shot, all utensils, anything that a magnet may attract. For 3 days, the Tartars and our crew offloaded every last piece we could find. Everything. On shore, the natives were very similar to those of the Americas. Dark hair, red skin, feathered headdresses, even war paint. The exception being they were well over 9 feet tall, just shy of our new friends. The crew began to explain to me the reasoning for offloading their cargo and guns. This area of our world is a very dangerous place to the unaware traveler. The maelstrom surrounding it will pull entire ships into the great deep below, and its magnetic attraction is so great that a single piece of iron will be your demise. The surrounding area is always shaking and convulsing, and the sea behaves rather disorderly as it rages to and fro. How interesting a thought, a black magnetic mountain of metal in the center of our world that makes one's compass always point north. How preposterous, I say. As we left for the ship, Barnabas appeared solemn to leave our only way of defense lying on the beach with the natives. Mr. Tristan took notice of the captain's gloom and attempted to reassure him by saying, "You have my word, Barnabas of Malta. I will escort you back to this place and your ship will be safe. Not a single grain of powder nor bottle of rum will be missing from it. The reward to them is handsome for their troubles. In truth, I must also admit, if our ship does not return, I have given permission to the chief to disperse the goods from the princess to the people and do as he wished with her hull." The captain sighed and nodded in agreement. I thought it best not to question his decision and remain silent for as long as possible. Finally, I mustered up the courage and spoke to Barnabas about the accord we made with the strange people ashore. We have been disarmed and are powerless to defend ourselves, much less retrieve our property. The captain just smiled as he always did and said quietly, "My worry is not of our ship, but of the crew in your safe return. As for Mr. Tristan, we're in good hands. One thing that has always been a lasting trait of the Tartar people is their unwavering honor. If one gave their word to another, only death could take it back. This was their finest quality." As we approached the inner boundary, there appeared a wide and fast-flowing river that entered from the sea and ran between 2 large islands. The current was formidable, but the Dark Star plowed through the rapids at its mouth and veered hard to port, scraping its hull against the rocky shore. At that moment I saw large men on the cliffs above us, with rope and grapple. The ship was to receive 2 lines, one for the bow, one for the stern, and the noise that we heard as we drew close to this place became deafening as we passed the high cliffs of the island. As we tied off at the whim of unknown peoples, my heart began beating uncontrollably. The unnatural scene being played out before me cannot be properly detailed in words. I was stricken with both fear and amazement. I saw a huge black mountain of unimaginable size, perhaps 30 miles was her span, and the sound of thunder was made with gale-force winds being produced as the waters entered into the bowels of the earth. The natives on the cliff above held taut the lines as the ship found its way along the edge of the maelstrom. We beheld the mighty power that the Creator has given our world. Such things are incomprehensible to imagine. I shall never forget the unnatural sound that it released from below. As we stepped from the soft sand onto the rocky shore, it was as if 1,000 elephants were trampling past. The sea, perhaps, was more stable than this land was. After taking various headings and measurements and crudely sketching a map of the area, I took a moment to gaze upon this amazing place. There were countless shipwrecks along the coast as far as the eye could see, and against the black rocks were many things, cannons and anchors, bands and chains that were frozen in place by its unrelenting force. The natives here were tall and very large in frame and stature, and they used only hand gestures and whistles to communicate with one another. In astonishment, I watched as their children played merely paces away from the edge of certain death. Some of these men were seen swimming in and out of the currents. Indeed, their foolish bravery was gut-wrenching for me to watch. Before leaving, the crews gave the natives their tobacco and several bottles of rum. And when Captain Barnabas gave the order, off to the Dark Star we went. As we boarded, the natives gave a whistle, and Captain Tristan ordered us all to take hold and brace ourselves. At an instant, the loud bellowing fury of the maelstrom ceased, and the earth then belched up a foul stench with smoke from below. Where once our ship lay on the bottom of the sea suddenly sat in over 35 fathoms of water, or 200 feet. We were pulled along by the large strangers on shore and were directed to the outlet of the current. The word was then given to free the grapples and raise full sails. In disbelief of what I had just witnessed, I reluctantly waved goodbye to the helping hands on the cliffside and took one last glimpse at the great lodestone, Meru, the black mountain of metal. When we arrived that afternoon back at the bay to retrieve our supplies and cannon, there were many natives camped around the entire shore. As we loaded the ship, Captain Tristan ordered his men to leave behind as payment 4 barrels of rum, 4 barrels of powder, 6 cases of shot, and 2 cannon. Captain Barnabas was delighted that the Princess was still afloat, and more so the crew was now refitted with their rifles and pistols. He then ordered them to retrieve 2 10-pounders, 4 barrels of powder, and 6 cases of ball and shot from the Princess' cargo hold. The kind old man, who I assumed was the chief of these people, shook the captain's hand and kissed his cheeks, happy for the gifts he received. Barnabas then gave him his finest pistols and ordered 6 more to be left with him. This made the old chief quite happy, as he showed them off to the others with great pride. The grin and subtle nod given to the captain from Mr. Tristan showed his approval. That evening the natives prepared a meal of large birds that resembled eagles, and their flavor was divine to the palate. After our bellies were full, we watched as the people danced and sang throughout the night. The next day was a very somber moment for us all as we parted our separate ways. I fought in vain to hold back tears as Mr. Tristan and his crew bid us farewell. We watched as they sailed away, all of us waving and shouting our final goodbyes. I often think of those fine men and the fantastic journey we made with them aboard the Dark Star that year. Having the pleasure in this life to meet these legends in the flesh is a memory that I will never forget. And departing ways with the crew of the Princess was perhaps the most difficult for me. I had become very fond of their good nature and carefree spirits, and as the crew bid me farewell, I began to weep. Oh, how I would miss the happiness and excitement that every moment in their presence seemed to give me. Some men search for power, treasure, and the secrets this life has to offer. If only they knew of this place and gazed as I did upon the wonders that can be found in it, I scarcely think wars and bickering would be the topic of their conversations. It's my duty to inform you precisely what I've witnessed, and I do so in good faith. May God have mercy on us all. Your humble servant, Sir Charles McNeilly. Yeah, and, that's just what I wanted to say. My love to you all. I'm Wild Dog, and I am out of here.
That's got to be the best pirate I've ever seen.
So it would seem.
Sorry.